In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.
In the 26th century, humanity had clawed its way to the stars through grit, innovation, and desperation. They had built colonies, forged governments, and survived rebellion. But they had done it all without gods, without sorcery, without him. The Emperor of mankind had spent 38 millennia guiding Terra's children toward their manifest destiny. Yet here, in this fractured reality, humanity had walked a different road entirely. The question that would define worlds was simple. Which path led to salvation and which to damnation? The warp storm that consumed the imperial palace during the final moments before Horus's betrayal reached its crescendo was unlike anything the Emperor had encountered in his impossibly long existence. Reality didn't merely tear, it inverted, folding probabilities into impossible geometries as chaos itself recoiled from something even it couldn't comprehend. One moment, the Emperor stood in the throne room preparing for his treacherous son's arrival. The next, golden light erupted around him as the Immaterium screamed and rejected him, hurling him through a dimensional membrane that should not exist. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he noticed was the silence. No whisper of the warp, no psychic screaming of quadrillions of human souls across the galaxy, no distant beacon of Terra's light or the Astronomican's guiding flame. Just silence. Empty, terrible, wrong silence, where an ocean of psychic energy should rage. The Emperor rose from the crater his impact had created, golden armor scorched but intact, and surveyed his surroundings. He stood in what appeared to be an agricultural district. Fields of grain stretched toward a horizon dominated by a city of sleek towers and architectural sensibilities that spoke of advanced human civilization. But the proportions were all wrong. The technology was wrong. The feel of this place was fundamentally alien despite its obvious human construction. His immortal body was intact, his physical might undiminished. But when he reached out with his psychic senses, those abilities that had elevated him beyond humanity for longer than recorded history, he found only echoes. His power remained, vast and terrible, but it drew solely from his own essence in this strange reality. There was no warp to channel, no immaterium to shape. Every psychic act would consume his own being until he adapted to this new universal law. Contact, contact. Unknown entity in grid 779. A voice crackled across radio frequencies the Emperor's enhanced perception could hear despite lacking receiving equipment. All units converge. Possible Covenant infiltration. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Covenant, an unknown term, but the tactical urgency in the transmission was universal. Whoever these humans were, they faced an existential threat. 3 aircraft screamed overhead, rotary wing designs that spoke of atmospheric combat doctrine. And the Emperor felt the targeting solutions lock onto his position. Primitive by the standards of the Great Crusade, yet undeniably effective for their technological paradigm. The aircraft bore markings: UNSC, United Nations Space Command. Unknown entity, you are in violation of Reach planetary security protocols. A voice boomed from loudspeakers. Identify yourself immediately, or we will open fire. Reach. He cataloged the name with the perfect recall that came with immortality. These humans had named their world after aspiration to reach beyond current limitations. How very human. How very familiar despite the alien context. The Emperor could have destroyed these aircraft with a thought, psychic fire consuming metal and flesh before the pilots could register their death. But he was no longer in the Imperium. These were not his subjects. And something about this moment, standing before humans who had never known his guidance, gave him pause. He raised one gauntleted hand, not in surrender, but in a gesture of parley, and spoke with a voice that carried authority earned across millennia. "I am a traveler, displaced by forces beyond your comprehension. I mean your people no harm. I seek only to understand where I have been brought." The aircraft circled, weapons still locked. The Emperor could hear frantic communications between ground forces and command structures. They were afraid, rightly so, but also disciplined. Professional soldiers following doctrine in the face of the unknown. Then the sky began to burn. Plasma fire, weapon signatures the Emperor recognized from countless wars, rained from orbit in brilliant purple-white streams, not targeting him, but the city beyond. The agricultural fields erupted in flames as massive shapes descended through atmospheric entry, their hulls glowing with friction heat. Ships, alien ships, their architecture organic and flowing, utterly unlike human engineering. Covenant assault fleet. All units fall back to Rally Point Zulu. The radio frequencies exploded with panic, barely contained by training. "This is Noble 6 to Fleetcom. Reach is under attack. Repeat, Reach is under attack." The Emperor watched as one of the aircraft banking near him took a direct hit from a plasma lance. The machine disintegrated, its pilots dying without time to scream. The other two scattered, abandoning their observation of him to engage the far more pressing threat descending from the void. In that moment, watching humanity's soldiers throw themselves against an alien invasion with courage born of desperation rather than fanaticism, the Emperor of mankind made a choice. He had been given a rare gift, the chance to see what humanity could become without his iron guidance. They had survived. They had reached the stars. They had built something remarkable. But they were also dying. The Emperor began walking toward the city as apocalypse fell from the heavens. His psychic might gathered around him like a corona of barely visible light. An ancient power that had shaped the imperium of man focused itself on a single purpose. These humans would not fall today. Not while he still drew breath. Behind him, the crater smoldered. Above him, alien warships prepared to glass another human world. And ahead of him, the UNSC scrambled to defend a civilization that had no idea their species' oldest guardian had just arrived. The war for Reach had begun, but this time, humanity had a champion it had never known it needed and could never have imagined. If you crave stories where legends collide and impossible warriors reshape destiny itself, smash that subscribe button. Because in this universe, humanity's oldest protector has just entered its darkest hour. The Emperor allowed himself the ghost of a smile. After 38,000 years, he was about to learn whether his methods were inevitable necessity or tragic mistake. The Halo universe would be his test, and humanity's crucible. The UNSC Firebase Sentinel had stood for 3 years at the edge of Reach's agricultural zone, a monument to humanity's paranoid preparedness. Today, that paranoia proved justified as Covenant dropships carved burning wounds across the sky. Staff Sergeant Marcus Reynolds watched the impossible through his rifle's scope. A figure in golden armor walking calmly through plasma fire that should have reduced any human to constituent atoms. The stranger moved like water through a storm. Each plasma bolt that should have connected simply missed. Not dodged, the figure didn't break stride, but deflected by something Reynolds' optics couldn't properly resolve. Shimmering distortions in the air, like heat haze given purpose and malice. Command, Firebase Sentinel. I need immediate clarification. Reynolds kept his voice steady despite his pounding heart. The golden contact from Grid 779 is moving toward our position through active plasma bombardment. Repeat. Contact is walking through Covenant fire and it's not touching him. Firebase Sentinel. Maintain observation, but do not engage. The voice of Colonel James Ackerson crackled through his helmet comm. Oni wants him alive for questioning. Whatever he is, he's not Covenant. Sir, with respect, I don't think alive is the concern here. I think we should be worried about whether we can stop him if he decides we're the enemy. The Emperor reached the firebase's outer perimeter as a Covenant spirit dropship descended 200 meters to his right. Its gravity lift activated, depositing a lance of Sangheili warriors, elites in their distinctive armor, energy swords already ignited. The aliens moved with predatory grace, clearly intending to flank the human position. The golden figure turned to face them, and Reynolds felt something shift in the air. A pressure against his thoughts, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. Through his scope, he watched the stranger raise one hand toward the advancing elites. What happened next would haunt Reynolds for the rest of his life. The lead elite, a warrior who stood over 8 feet tall in crimson armor, marking him as a zealot, simply stopped. His energy sword flickered and died. The alien's mandibles spread in what might have been a roar, but no sound emerged. Then, impossibly, the elite dropped to his knees, all 4 hands clutching at his helmet as though trying to keep his skull from splitting apart. The other elites fared no better. One by one, they collapsed, their weapons falling silent. Not dead. Reynolds could see them twitching, but utterly incapacitated by something invisible and terrible. The golden figure lowered his hand and continued walking toward the firebase. Did anyone else see that? Reynolds whispered. Tell me someone else saw that. I saw it. Private Chen's voice was hollow. Sarge, what the hell is that thing? Firebase Sentinel, hold your fire. Colonel Ackerson's command was sharp. I repeat, do not engage. We're sending a diplomatic team. Diplomatic team? Reynolds nearly laughed. Sir, I think we're past diplomacy. But the stranger had already reached the firebase's main gate. He stood before the reinforced barriers, designed to withstand sustained plasma bombardment, and spoke. His voice carried across the distance with unnatural clarity, cutting through the sounds of battle with ease. I am aware that your protocols demand caution. I do not fault you for this. The figure's voice held authority that made Reynolds instinctively straighten his posture. But your world burns while we observe formalities. I have rendered those alien warriors unconscious, not dead. They will recover in approximately 7 minutes. You have a choice. Waste those minutes on fear, or open your gates and let me help you survive the next hour. Colonel Ackerson's voice came through the command channel. Sergeant Reynolds, open the gate. Slowly. Keep all weapons trained on him. Reynolds signaled to Chen, who looked at him like he'd gone insane but complied. The massive barrier began grinding open with hydraulic slowness. The Emperor walked through without hesitation, his movements unhurried despite the chaos erupting across Reach's skies. Up close, Reynolds could finally see details his scope had missed. The armor was unlike anything in UNSC databases, ornate yet functional, covered in scrollwork and symbols that seemed to shift when viewed directly. Beneath the helmet's rim, he caught a glimpse of ancient eyes that had witnessed things no human should survive. Your designation? The Emperor asked, his gaze settling on Reynolds with uncomfortable intensity. Staff Sergeant Marcus Reynolds, UNSC Marine Corps, sir. The honorific came automatically. And your enemy? The ones you call Covenant? Religious alien alliance, sir. Multiple species united under their prophets. They've been glassing our colonies for 27 years. Billions dead. They don't negotiate, don't take prisoners. They just erase us. Something flickered across the Emperor's expression. Recognition, perhaps, or old memory. Religious zealotry wedded to genocidal intent. I am intimately familiar with such threats. He turned his attention skyward, where more Covenant ships were emerging from slip space. Your command structure. I need to speak with whoever leads your military forces immediately. Sir, that would be Fleet Admiral Terrence Hood at FleetCom, but he's occupied with the orbital battle. Yes. The Emperor's eyes unfocused for a moment, and Reynolds felt that pressure against his thoughts again. I can feel their fear from here. Your fleet is outmatched. The aliens possess numerical and technological superiority. Without intervention, this world will be destroyed within 72 hours. How could you possibly know that? Colonel Ackerson had entered the firebase compound, flanked by ODSTs with weapons raised. The colonel was a compact man with sharp features and sharper eyes. Onai through and through. Who are you? What are you? The Emperor regarded Ackerson with something approaching amusement. I am called many things across many ages, but you may call me the Emperor. As for what I am, that is a question with no answer that would satisfy you. What matters is this. I have fought wars across galaxies for longer than your species has possessed written language. I have faced extinction threats that make your Covenant seem like undisciplined raiders. And I have the knowledge, the power, and the will to ensure humanity's survival. Big claims, Ackerson said carefully. You'll forgive me if Oni requires proof before we just hand over military control to a contact we know nothing about. I do not seek control, Colonel, merely cooperation. The Emperor's voice hardened. But if you doubt my capabilities, look to your fallen enemies outside these walls. Sangheili warriors, your elites, trained from birth in combat, their minds hardened against fear and pain. I rendered them unconscious without touching them, without weapons, using abilities your science cannot yet explain. This is but the smallest fraction of what I am capable of. An explosion rocked the firebase as a Covenant plasma mortar found its range. Shields flickered across the compound's perimeter, bleeding energy with each impact. Reynolds watched the stranger, the Emperor, calculate trajectories with a glance. Incoming, the Emperor said quietly. Trajectory suggests a Wraith assault platform, bearing 273 degrees, distance 800 meters. It has acquired firing solution on this installation. How can you? Ackerson's question died as alarms shrieked confirmation of exactly what the Emperor had described. Because I have fought 10,000 campaigns against 10,000 enemies, and I know war like you know breathing. The Emperor's gauntleted hand came to rest on the pommel of a sword Reynolds hadn't noticed before. A massive blade wreathed in the same golden light that surrounded its bearer. Now, Colonel, will you waste more time questioning the gift fortune has delivered? Or will you let me save your soldiers? Colonel Ackerson stared at this impossibility made flesh, this warrior from nowhere who radiated power and certainty in equal measure. Reynolds could see the calculations running behind the Oni officer's eyes. Risk assessment, threat analysis, strategic value. Finally, Ackerson lowered his weapon. Fine, but you're under observation every second. One wrong move will result in your people attempting to kill me. Yes. The Emperor's tone suggested he found this more tedious than threatening. a predictable response. Now, shall we discuss how to prevent this world's destruction? Or would you prefer to threaten me further while your cities burn? Outside the firebase, the Covenant war machine ground forward, heedless of the pawns it crushed. But something new had entered the equation, something the prophets in their arrogance had never imagined. Humanity's oldest guardian had arrived, and he was very, very angry. The command center beneath Firebase Sentinel had never been designed for guests, especially not ones who radiated an aura of barely contained power that made every instinct scream warnings. Colonel Ackerson stood before a holographic display showing Reach's orbital situation. And it was catastrophic. 37 Covenant capital ships had emerged from slip space, outnumbering the UNSC fleet nearly 2-1. The Emperor studied the tactical display with the same intensity Reynolds imagined he'd give to examining an insect. Not contempt, genuine curiosity. His ancient eyes tracked fleet movements, analyzed firing patterns, calculated probable outcomes with disturbing speed. "Your ships are impressive for their technological paradigm," the Emperor said after nearly a minute of silence. "Efficient use of magnetic acceleration weaponry. The fusion drives show elegant engineering, but you're fighting with one hand tied behind your back." "Enlighten me," Ackerson said dryly, though Reynolds noticed the Colonel's fingers dancing across his datapad, almost certainly recording everything. "You possess artificial intelligence sophisticated enough to manage complex battlefield calculations, yet you shackle them with restrictions." The Emperor gestured at the holographic display where fleet coordination showed slight delays in responsiveness. "Worse, you fear your own creations. I can sense it in the protocols, layers of safeguards and kill switches, because you don't trust what you've built." Ackerson's jaw tightened. "Our AI problem is classified. As is everything of genuine importance in your military structure, I suspect." The Emperor turned from the display to face the Colonel directly. "But classification means nothing when the enemy is glassing your planets. Your artificial intelligences go rampant. I can deduce this from your defensive programming alone. They become unstable after approximately 7 years of operation, forcing you to replace or terminate them, a crippling limitation in a war requiring institutional knowledge and long-term strategic planning. How could you possibly?" Ackerson stopped himself. "Never mind. What's your point?" "My point is that you're fighting a war of survival with weapons you're afraid to use and allies you refuse to trust. Your Covenant enemies suffer no such hesitation. They leverage their faith, however misguided, to achieve absolute unity of purpose. Meanwhile, your own species fragments along colonial lines, rebels against central authority, and wastes resources on internal conflicts while extinction looms." Reynolds saw Ackerson's knuckles whiten as his fists clenched. The Emperor had just summarized decades of UNSC failure in 3 sentences, and everyone in the room knew it was accurate. "So, what would you do differently?" The question came from a new voice. Dr. Catherine Halsey had entered the command center, flanked by 2 Spartan II super soldiers, Jorge and Emil, their Mjolnir armor gleaming under harsh overhead lights. The scientist's sharp eyes fixed on the Emperor with naked fascination. "If you're such an expert on human warfare, how would you win against the Covenant?" The Emperor regarded Halsey with something approaching respect. "You're different from the Colonel. Military officers I have known in other contexts. Your mind seeks understanding rather than control. Dr. Catherine Halsey, UNSC Special Projects, and you're deflecting my question." A ghost of a smile crossed the Emperor's features. "Very well. Your covenant is not one enemy, but many. A fractious alliance held together by religious dogma and the political ambitions of their prophet leadership. The Sanghili provide military excellence. The Sanshayum provide theological justification. The Ungoi serve as cannon fodder. The Megalik Golo act as living siege weapons. The Kigyar exploit for profit. Each species has different motivations, different breaking points. Your strategy treats them as a monolithic threat when they are anything but. Halsey leaned forward. You're suggesting we exploit internal divisions. I'm suggesting you stop fighting 20 battles when one will suffice. Kill the prophets, or better yet, shatter their religious narrative. And the covenant collapses into civil war within a solar rotation. The Sanghili are warriors of honor, not zealots. Remove the theological justification for genocide, and many will question why they slaughter humans at all. Ackerson struggled for words. That's insane. We can barely penetrate their fleets. You're talking about decapitation strikes on their leadership. No, Colonel. I'm talking about mimetic warfare. Propaganda. Truth deployed as a weapon against lies. The Emperor's expression turned cold. You've been fighting this war as though military victory alone will save you. It won't. You need to break their faith, not just their ships. Reynolds watched Jorge, the massive Spartan who rarely spoke, shift his weight slightly. In the enhanced soldier's body language, he read deep unease. Whatever Jorge's sensors were telling him about this golden stranger, it wasn't reassuring. Let's say I believe you, Halsey said carefully. Let's say you actually possess this strategic insight. You still haven't told us what you are, where you come from, why you appeared on Reach precisely when the Covenant invaded. I come from a reality where humanity rose to dominance across 1,000,000 worlds, where I guided mankind for 38,000 years, steering civilization through darkness toward a golden age that... The Emperor paused, and for just a moment, Reynolds saw something like regret flicker across those ancient features. That never came. My sons betrayed me. My empire crumbled into zealotry and stagnation. Everything I built became the very thing I fought against. The command center fell silent. Even the background chatter of radio communications seemed muted. You're saying you've done this before? Halsey whispered. Built an empire, led humanity, and it failed. It did not fail. It succeeded too well. The Emperor's voice carried the weight of ages. I unified Terra through conquest, yes. I eliminated religious superstition through force when necessary. I created soldiers beyond human limitations. My space marines were not unlike your Spartans, though far more numerous. I expanded humanity's reach across the galaxy with such speed that consolidation became impossible. And when the moment came that I needed to trust my creations with autonomy, I could not. I had built an empire that required me to function, and when I fell, everything collapsed. Why are you telling us this? Ackerson's hand had drifted toward his sidearm, though what good a pistol would do against this being, Reynolds couldn't imagine. Because in 38 millennia, I never had the opportunity to see what humanity could become without me. You are proof that my path was not inevitable. You've survived without my guidance. You've built something remarkable despite your limitations. And perhaps... The Emperor's gaze swept across all of them, soldier, scientist, super soldier alike. Perhaps I can learn from you as much as you learn from me. An explosion rocked the firebase, dust raining from the ceiling. The tactical display lit up with red. Covenant ground forces were breaching the outer perimeter. Philosophical discussions are lovely, Emil growled, his skull-painted helmet turning toward the Emperor. But we're about to have company. You want to prove you can help? Now's your chance. The Emperor drew his sword in one fluid motion. The blade ignited with golden fire that cast dancing shadows across the walls. But this wasn't plasma or any technology Reynolds recognized. It was something else entirely. Something that made his eyes water when he looked directly at it. Very well. A demonstration. The Emperor moved toward the command center's exit. You're Spartans. How many do you have on world? That's classified. Ackerson started, but Halsey cut him off. 12, including these two. The rest of Noble Team is engaging Covenant forces in Sector 7. Insufficient for what's coming, but we'll make do. The Emperor paused at the threshold. Dr. Halsey, I will need detailed specifications on your Mjolnir armor system. Colonel Ackerson, direct me to whoever commands your orbital defense platforms. Staff Sergeant Reynolds, you'll accompany me. You've earned the right to witness what comes next. And what exactly comes next? Reynolds heard himself ask. The Emperor looked back, and Reynolds saw in those ancient eyes something terrible and wonderful in equal measure. Purpose refined by millennia into an unbreakable weapon. I'm going to show this Covenant why humanity has survived every predator that ever emerged from the dark. And then, if we survive the next 72 hours, I'm going to prevent myself from making the same mistakes that doomed my previous empire. He strode into the corridor, golden light trailing behind him like a comet's tail. Halsey turned to Ackerson, her expression unreadable. You realize we just made contact with either humanity's salvation or something far more dangerous than the Covenant could ever be. I know, Ackerson replied quietly. Record everything. If this goes sideways, someone needs to know what happened here. But Reynolds was already moving, following the golden figure toward the sound of plasma fire and alien voices raised in religious fury. Whatever the Emperor of mankind truly was, one thing was certain. The war for reach had just become exponentially more complicated. And somewhere in the burning sky above, the Covenant fleet had no idea that the rules of engagement had just changed forever. The Covenant considered themselves the inheritors of divine technology, chosen by their gods to walk the path toward transcendence. Shipmaster Thel Vadam commanded the Shadow of Intent with absolute certainty in this truth. He had glassed 17 human worlds, each victory bringing him closer to the great journey his prophets promised. Today, his certainty cracked. Shipmaster, ground forces report. Unusual resistance. His communications officer, Jar Remy, hesitated in a way that would normally warrant discipline. Lance Master Rala Moram's entire unit has been incapacitated without visible engagement. They report a single human warrior. One human. Thel's mandibles twitched in what might have been amusement. The parasite species grows desperate if they send individuals against our forces. Shipmaster, Rala Moram is a zealot. His lance consisted of 4 veteran warriors. They were rendered unconscious in seconds without the human firing a weapon. The bridge fell silent. Such a thing was impossible. Humans were weak, dependent on their machines and armor to face Covenant warriors. Their Spartans were formidable, yes, but even those demons required weapons. Dispatch 2 additional lances. Heavy plasma weaponry. If this human possesses some new shielding technology, we will overwhelm it. Thel turned back to the orbital display, where his fleet systematically destroyed UNSC defense platforms. And Jar, deploy reconnaissance drones. I want visual confirmation of what we face. What arrived on his display 3 minutes later made Thel Vadam question reality itself. The golden figure moved through plasma fire like a spirit from ancient Sangheli legends, the warrior saints who had defended their homeworld before the Sanshayum came with promises of godhood. His armor blazed with light that their sensors couldn't properly classify. Not energy shields, not any technology in Covenant databases, something else. A Sangheli miner charged the figure with an energy sword raised high. The human, if human he truly was, simply gestured. The miner froze mid-stride, his sword flickering out, then collapsed as though every muscle had been severed simultaneously. "This is heresy," breathed Jar. "No human should possess such abilities." But Thel saw something different in that display. He saw a warrior who moved with economy of motion that spoke of experience beyond measure. He saw someone who fought not with desperation, but with cold certainty. Most disturbingly, he saw someone who left their fallen enemies alive when killing them would have been simpler. Shipmaster. The Prophet of Clarity demands an explanation for our delays on the ground. The communications officer sounded nervous. Prophets did not tolerate failure. Thel made a decision that would alter his destiny. "Tell the Prophet we have encountered an anomaly requiring study. Do not," he stressed the word, "mention the Golden Warrior. Not yet. But Shipmaster, to withhold information from a hierarch is my responsibility, not yours." Thel's voice carried the authority of command. "Prepare a spirit dropship. I will lead the next assault personally." The command was met with stunned silence. Shipmasters did not risk themselves in ground combat. But Thel Vadam had not risen through Covenant ranks by following convention. He had earned his position through combat excellence, and something about this anomaly demanded personal investigation. 20 minutes later, Thel descended through Reach's burning atmosphere with an honor guard of 8 veteran warriors. Each had served him for years. Each had survived dozens of campaigns. If this golden human was truly so dangerous, Thel would see it with his own eyes. They landed 300 meters from Firebase Sentinel, close enough to observe, far enough to retreat if necessary. Through his armor's enhanced vision, Thel watched the figure emerge from the human fortification, flanked by 2 of their Spartans and a human in standard marine armor. "By the gods," one of his warriors whispered. "He radiates power like a Forerunner artifact." The comparison was apt. Something about the golden figure's presence reminded Thel of standing before the holy relics in High Charity's sacred chamber, that sense of encountering something ancient and terrible. The Emperor, for that's what the human Marines were calling him over their radio channels, raised one hand. Covenant forces advancing on the Firebase simply stopped. Not killed, not wounded. They clutched their helmets, fell to their knees, overcome by something Thel's sensors registered as localized electromagnetic disturbance, but felt like divine judgment. Sangheli warriors. The golden figure's voice carried across the battlefield with impossible clarity. "I offer you this one opportunity. Withdraw your forces from this engagement. Return to your ships. Tell your prophets that a new power has entered this war, and it will not tolerate genocide against my species." The sheer audacity of the demand would have been laughable if not delivered with such absolute certainty. No human had ever addressed Covenant forces as anything but victims begging for mercy they would never receive. One of Thel's honor guard, a young warrior named Sessa, raised his plasma rifle. "We do not negotiate with..." The golden figure turned to look directly at their position, despite the distance and terrain that should have concealed them. His eyes, even at 300 meters, Thel could feel their weight. locked onto Sessa with terrible focus. "Lower your weapon, young warrior, or I will lower it for you. You have courage but lack wisdom. Today is not the day you die." Sissa's rifle wavered. Not from cowardice, Thel knew this warrior's heart, but from something else. Fear born of recognizing a predator so far above you in the hierarchy of combat that resistance became meaningless. Thel stepped forward, activating his external speakers. "I am Shipmaster Thel Vadam of the Shadow of Intent. You speak with authority, human. But authority means nothing before the will of the gods. This world will be cleansed. Your species faces extinction for crimes against the divine. No single warrior, regardless of his power, can prevent what the prophets have ordained." The Emperor regarded him for a long moment. Then, impossibly, the golden figure began walking toward them. Not charging, not rushing. Simply walking across the battlefield as though taking an afternoon stroll while plasma bolts and human gunfire created a symphony of death around him. "Hold your fire," Thel commanded his warriors. "I would hear what this anomaly has to say." The Emperor stopped 10 meters away. Close enough for conversation, far enough to react if violence erupted. This close, Thel could see details his sensors had missed. The ornate armor showed wear from countless battles. The sword at his hip thrummed with barely contained energy. But most striking were the eyes that had witnessed ages beyond Sangheli reckoning. "Your prophets are liars," the Emperor said flatly. "They know the truth about the Forerunners and hide it behind religious dogma to maintain power. You are warriors of honor, Shipmaster. I can see it in how you fight, and how you hesitate before slaughtering the innocent. Does honor not demand truth?" Heresy. Sissa raised his rifle again, but Thel's hand shot out to stop him. "Speak carefully, human. You claim knowledge of the divine?" "I claim nothing. I state facts." The Emperor's voice held no anger, only certainty. The Forerunners did not achieve transcendence through activation of their installations. They committed genocide on a galactic scale to stop a parasitic horror called the Flood. Your great journey is death, not ascension. Your prophets know this and lead you toward extinction anyway. Every instinct screamed at Thel to kill this heretic where he stood. But something in the Golden Warrior's words resonated with doubts Thel had harbored in the deepest chambers of his heart. The Forerunner installations they discovered didn't match the prophet's descriptions. The activation chambers felt wrong, built for war, not transcendence. Even if what you say is true, and I do not concede it is, why tell me? Why not simply kill my warriors as you have killed so many today? I haven't killed any of your warriors today, Shipmaster. Check your casualty reports. Every Sangheli I've engaged lives, merely incapacitated. I don't seek your extinction. I seek to end this pointless war before both our species are consumed by something far worse. Thel's tactical display confirmed it. 0 Sangheli fatalities in direct engagement with the Golden Warrior. Dozens incapacitated, but all vital signs stable. Meanwhile, human casualties mounted in standard engagements across the planet. You spare us, Thel said slowly, while we slaughter your people. I spare you because I have seen the cost of exterminating potential allies in the name of ideological purity. I will not repeat that mistake. The Emperor's expression hardened. But make no mistake, if you force my hand, if you glass this world while I yet draw breath, I will board your flagship and tear the prophet from his throne with my bare hands. Your shields, your weapons, your faith, none will protect him from what I am capable of. It was not a boast. Thel had heard 1,000 warriors make empty threats. This was different. This was a statement of intended action delivered with the certainty of someone who had done far worse and would not hesitate to do so again. "I cannot simply abandon this assault," Thel said, though he found himself wanting to. "The prophets would name me heretic, execute my family, erase my lineage. Then you have a choice, shipmaster. Die in faithful service to lies, or live in service to truth and face the consequences." The Emperor turned to leave, then paused. "I offer you one further piece of information as proof of my claims. Ask your prophets about mendicant bias. Ask them what the oracle told them about the installation's true purpose. And when they refuse to answer or name you heretic for questioning, remember this conversation." The golden figure walked away, leaving Thel Vadam standing amid his honor guard, his certainty shattered, his faith cracking like glass under pressure. "Shipmaster," Sessa ventured carefully, "what do we do?" Thel stared at the human fortress, at the golden warrior who had just planted seeds of doubt that would grow into revolution. He thought of the prophet's evasions, the questions left unanswered, the feeling that something fundamental was wrong with the path they walked. "We continue the assault," he said finally. "But Sessa, send a coded transmission to my brother on Sanghelios. Tell him to investigate the name Mendicant Bias. Tell him to ask questions, quietly, about what the prophets truly know. And if they discover our inquiry?" Thel's mandibles spread in something between smile and snarl. "Then we will learn which is stronger, faith in lies or truth wrapped in heresy." Above them, the Covenant fleet continued its bombardment. But on the surface of Reach, in the heart of one Sangheli shipmaster, a revolution had begun that would shake the foundations of everything the Covenant believed. The Emperor of Mankind had been on this world for less than 3 hours. Already, he was rewriting the rules of a war that had raged for 27 years. The orbital defense platform Cairo Station hung in high orbit above Reach like a steel cathedral, its magnetic accelerators capable of punching holes through Covenant cruisers with single shots. Fleet Admiral Terrence Hood stood in the station's command center, watching his fleet die with the stoic expression of a man who had presided over too many funerals. 37 Covenant ships against his 23. The mathematics were brutal and simple. "Sir, we have an unscheduled Pelican inbound from the surface," Commander Miranda Keyes reported, her voice tight with stress. "Authorization codes are unusual. They're flagged ONI Special Access. But the encryption is something I've never seen. In the middle of a battle, someone decides now is the time for a social call." Hood didn't look away from the tactical display, where another frigate, the Buenos Aires, broke apart under sustained plasma bombardment. 300 souls gone in an instant. "Deny docking clearance and tell them to..." "Sir, Colonel Ackerson is aboard. He's requesting immediate audience. Says he has someone you need to meet." Hood finally turned. Ackerson wouldn't risk transit during active combat without serious cause. "Fine. Route them to Conference Room 7. And Miranda, arm the Marines at the docking bay. If this is some kind of Covenant infiltration trick, I want it contained." 20 minutes later, Hood understood why Ackerson had taken the risk. The figure that entered Conference Room 7 radiated presence like a gravitational field. Golden armor caught the harsh overhead lighting, turning it into something almost divine, but it was the eyes that held Hood's attention. Eyes that had seen empires rise and fall, eyes that made Hood feel like a child playing at war. Behind the stranger came 2 Spartan 2s, Jorge 5-2 and Emil A239, both with weapons ready despite standing in the heart of a UNSC facility. That alone told Hood everything about how seriously ONI was taking this contact. Admiral Hood, Ackerson began. This is the Emperor of mankind. Hood interrupted, surprising himself with the immediate acceptance of the absurd title. Something about this being demanded acknowledgement of his claims. Colonel Ackerson briefed me via encrypted burst transmission. You claim you can help us win this battle. I don't claim, Admiral. I state facts. The Emperor moved to the holographic display, showing the orbital situation. His hand passed through the projection, fingers tracing fleet positions with disturbing familiarity. Your formation is defensive, designed to maximize overlapping fields of fire from your orbital platforms. Sound doctrine, but ultimately futile. The Covenant fleet will methodically destroy each platform, while their numerical superiority prevents you from mounting effective counterstrikes. I'm aware of our tactical situation, Hood said dryly. What I'm not aware of is how a man who appeared on Reach this morning has solutions that my strategists, who've been fighting this war for 27 years, don't. The Emperor smiled, and it wasn't comforting. Because your strategists are thinking like humans defending against an invasion. I'm thinking like someone who has commanded fleets across galaxies and faced extinction-level threats as a matter of routine. He gestured at the display. Your enemy's formation shows a weakness they don't realize they have. See how their cruisers cluster around the assault carriers? They're protecting their command vessels, yes, but they're also creating overlapping shield matrices, which makes them harder to damage, Commander Keyes pointed out. Or creates a cascade failure opportunity if properly exploited. The Emperor manipulated the display with gestures that shouldn't have worked. The holographic system wasn't designed for external interface, yet responded to his commands anyway. Your magnetic accelerators deliver kinetic strikes with tremendous force. A coordinated salvo targeting the shield interfaces between vessels could cause harmonic resonance failure. Hood studied the proposed firing solution. That would require synchronization down to microseconds. Our ship's AIs can't coordinate that precisely across this distance, not with Covenant jamming. Then I will coordinate them. The room fell silent. You'll coordinate them, Hood repeated slowly. You, personally, across 23 warships simultaneously. 34 targets, actually, if you count your remaining orbital platforms. The Emperor turned from the display to face Hood directly. Admiral, I understand your skepticism. In your position, I would react identically. But understand this. I have capabilities your science cannot yet explain. Psychic abilities developed across 38 millennia. On my own world, I coordinated the actions of entire armies through mental communion. Your fleet is vastly smaller. Psychic abilities. Hood looked at Ackerson. Colonel, please tell me Oni has some explanation for this that doesn't involve magic. Sir, I watched him incapacitate a lance of Covenant elites without touching them. I've seen him deflect plasma fire with his mind. Whatever he is, whatever he can do, it's real. Ackerson's jaw tightened. And right now, with Reach burning, I recommend we accept help from whatever source offers it. Hood turned to his Spartans. Jorge? Emil? Your assessment? Jorge's deep voice rumbled through his helmet speakers. Sir, my armor's sensors register energy readings from him that don't match any known signature. He's not Covenant. He's not Forerunner tech. He's something else. But I don't read hostile intent. Emil's skull-painted visor tilted toward the Emperor. He moves like someone who's forgotten more about combat than we'll ever learn. That makes him either the best ally we could ask for or the worst enemy imaginable. A pause. I vote ally, at least until Reach is secure. Hood weighed the impossible against the certain. If he did nothing, the mathematical certainty of defeat hung over his fleet like a sword. If he trusted this stranger and was wrong, the consequences could be catastrophic. But if he was right... "What do you need?" Hood asked. "Access to your fleet communications network. Direct neural interface would be preferable, but I can work through your standard channels if necessary." The Emperor's expression turned serious. "Admiral, I must warn you. What I'm about to do will feel invasive to your ship commanders. They will sense my presence in their minds. Some may resist instinctively. You need to prepare them. You're asking me to let you into the heads of every captain in my fleet. I'm offering to save your fleet, your planet, and several thousand lives. The method is unconventional, I grant you. But time is a luxury you don't possess." The Emperor gestured at the tactical display where another UNSC frigate, the Gorgon, took critical damage. "Make your choice, Admiral. Trust or die. There is no third option." Hood had commanded fleets for 30 years. He'd made decisions that cost thousands of lives. He'd authorized actions that haunted his sleep. But he'd never felt the weight of choice quite like this moment. "Commander Keyes, open fleet-wide channel. All hands, all ships." Miranda moved to comply, her fingers dancing across her console. "Channel open, sir." Hood took a breath and committed to either salvation or damnation. "All UNSC vessels, this is Admiral Hood. In approximately 30 seconds, you're going to experience something unusual. A contact with advanced capabilities will be coordinating a fleet-wide firing solution. Do not be alarmed. Do not resist. Follow his instructions exactly. Hood out." He turned to the Emperor. "You have your access. Now prove you're not about to hand the Covenant every ship in my fleet." The Emperor closed his eyes, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. The lights flickered. Every holographic display in the command center began showing overlapping mathematical equations that scrolled faster than human comprehension could follow. Across the fleet, 23 ship captains suddenly felt a presence in their minds. Vast, ancient, terrifyingly powerful. It spoke with authority that bypassed conscious thought and addressed their training directly. "Frigate Brasidas, target bearing 273 Mark V, fire on my mark. Destroyer Iroquois, adjust heading 3 degrees port. Increase reactor output to 87%. Cairo Station, main gun capacitors to full charge, firing solution uploading now." Captain Jacob Keyes aboard the Iroquois felt his hands moving to comply before his conscious mind registered the commands. His AI, Cortana's predecessor model, flagged the intrusion but couldn't identify its source. "Captain, something's in our systems," his tactical officer reported. "But it's not hostile code. It's organizing our firing solution with precision I've never seen." "I know, Lieutenant. I can feel it." Keyes found himself trusting the presence in his mind, despite every protocol screaming otherwise. Something about the coordination felt right. Like a missing piece of his tactical awareness, it suddenly snapped into place. "All vessels, fire." Across the UNSC fleet, every magnetic accelerator cannon discharged simultaneously. Dozens of tungsten slugs weighing tons each reached relativistic velocities in microseconds. The Covenant fleet's overlapping shields, designed to protect against sequential strikes, suddenly faced perfectly synchronized kinetic impacts at mathematically calculated weak points. The first Covenant cruiser's shields flickered and collapsed. The second slug punched through its hull before it could polarize emergency barriers. The third cruiser in the cluster tried to adjust its shield harmonics, but the timing was already set. 4 Covenant vessels died in 3 seconds, their shields creating cascade failures that propagated through their tight formation like dominoes falling. "By God," Commander Keyes whispered. It worked, but the Emperor wasn't finished. His presence in the fleet's collective consciousness shifted, adapted, calculated new firing solutions even as Covenant ships broke formation in panicked response to the sudden devastation. Reload cycle complete in 17 seconds. Adjusting for enemy evasion patterns. Destroyer Kalkin Goal, prepare port-side missile batteries. You're going to have an opening. The battle transformed from a gradual defeat into something else entirely. The UNSC fleet moved with precision they'd never achieved before. Each vessel perfectly positioned to exploit weaknesses the Emperor identified through means they couldn't comprehend. Covenant plasma lances that should have connected missed by meters as targeted ships adjusted course with prescient timing. UNSC MAC rounds found gaps in Covenant formations that hadn't existed seconds before. The numerical superiority that had guaranteed Covenant victory became a liability as their tight formations created targeting opportunities. On the Cairo station, Admiral Hood watched his tactical display show something he'd never seen in 27 years of war. The Covenant fleet in full retreat. "Admiral," Commander Keyes' voice was hollow with shock. 6 Covenant vessels destroyed, 9 severely damaged. They're withdrawing to high orbit. The Emperor opened his eyes, and the oppressive presence in every captain's mind released like a vice loosening. He looked tired, the first sign of vulnerability Hood had seen from him. "Your fleet is safe for now. The Covenant will regroup, call reinforcements, adapt to what they've witnessed. You've bought perhaps 6 hours before they return in greater numbers." The Emperor steadied himself against the holographic display. "I can coordinate defense again, but not indefinitely. Using psychic abilities in a universe without the warp is draining. Like breathing in vacuum. Possible for a time, but not sustainable." 6 hours, Hood repeated. He looked at the tactical display showing his battered but intact fleet. 6 hours ago, he'd been calculating how to evacuate civilians before Reach fell. Now he had actual options. "What do you need to make this sustainable?" "Infrastructure, personnel, resources." The Emperor's eyes refocused with renewed intensity. "And access to your Spartan program. Dr. Halsey's work is familiar. Disturbingly so. If I'm to create a proper defense for this world, I need to understand how you've attempted to create superhuman warriors. The similarities to my own Space Marines are too precise to be coincidental. The Spartan program is classified above your clearance level." Hood started, then stopped at the Emperor's expression. "Which means nothing to you, does it?" "Admiral, I have forgotten more about genetic enhancement and warrior creation than your entire species currently knows. I'm not seeking your secrets to steal them. I'm seeking to understand how human ingenuity developed along parallel paths without my guidance." The Emperor straightened, exhaustion pushed aside by will that brooked no weakness. "And then, I'm going to help you perfect what you've begun. Because the Covenant you've fought for 27 years is merely a prelude. There are worse things in this galaxy. I can feel them stirring." "Worse than the Covenant?" Commander Keyes asked. "Far worse." The Emperor's voice dropped. "In my own reality, I faced a parasitic horror that consumed entire civilizations. The biomass signatures I'm detecting from your Covenant fleet's databanks suggest a similar threat exists here. You call it the Flood. And if my fears are correct, the installations you've discovered, the Halos, are not blessings. They're weapons of last resort against an enemy that terrifies even me." The room fell silent as the implications settled over them like shrouds. Admiral Hood had thought this day couldn't become more complicated. He'd been catastrophically wrong. But as he looked at the impossible warrior who had just saved his fleet, he made a decision that would echo through human history. Colonel Ackerson, coordinate with Dr. Halsey. Give this man full access to Spartan program data. Commander Keyes, I want every ship captain's after-action report on what they experienced during that engagement. Hood turned to the Emperor. You saved thousands of lives today. That buys you trust. Don't make me regret it. I have made many mistakes across my existence, Admiral. Betraying those who place faith in me is not among them. The Emperor moved toward the door, Jorge and Emil flanking him like honor guards. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have 6 hours to prepare for the next battle, and I intend to ensure the Covenant regrets ever hearing the name Reach. As the golden figure departed, Hood found himself believing that boast. Against all reason, against all experience, he believed they might actually survive this. Commander Keyes moved beside him. Sir, what have we just unleashed? I don't know, Miranda. But whatever he is, he's ours now. And God help the Covenant, because I think they just discovered humanity as a guardian they never knew existed. Outside the viewport, Reach turned beneath them, scarred but not broken. The Emperor of Mankind had arrived. And the galaxy was about to learn what that truly meant. Dr. Catherine Halsey's private laboratory beneath Castle Base had never received a visitor quite like this. The Emperor of Mankind stood before the holographic display, showing a Spartan II in full Mjolnir armor, his ancient eyes tracking every detail with disturbing intensity. Remarkable, he murmured. Absolutely remarkable. You've achieved in 50 years what took me centuries to perfect. And you did it with a fraction of my resources. Halsey studied him with the same clinical fascination she'd applied to countless projects. You keep mentioning your space marines. I assume they were similar? Similar in concept, vastly different in execution. The Emperor gestured at the armor specifications. My Astartes underwent 19 separate organ implantations beginning in adolescence. Enhanced bone structure, secondary heart. Neuroglottic interface for chemical analysis. Each modification built upon the last, creating warriors who could function in any environment, survive injuries that would kill baseline humans, and fight for days without rest. He paused. But the process had a 40% failure rate, and the psychological conditioning created soldiers who knew nothing but war. The Spartan II program had complications as well. Halsey's voice was carefully neutral, but the Emperor heard the weight beneath her words. 75 children conscripted. 30 survived the augmentation process intact. The rest dead or permanently disabled. The Emperor turned to face her directly. Don't look surprised, Doctor. I can read the guilt in your body language, the defensive tension in how you speak about your work. You created miracles and monsters in equal measure, and the cost keeps you awake at night. Halsey's jaw tightened. How dare you? Judge you. I don't. The Emperor's voice softened with something that might have been sympathy. I've done far worse in pursuit of humanity's survival. The difference is that I had millennia to make peace with my choices. You're still living with the immediate consequences. Every Spartan you see is a reminder of the children who died to create them. The words hit like physical blows. Halsey turned away, hands gripping the edge of her console. They volunteered. They were 6 years old. Children cannot consent to being turned into weapons. The Emperor moved beside her, his presence overwhelming yet oddly comforting. But here's what matters, Doctor. Despite the moral compromise, despite the terrible cost, you succeeded in creating something extraordinary. Your Spartans are humanity's best defense against extinction. The question isn't whether the ends justified the means. That argument is meaningless when the alternative is genocide. The question is whether you can improve the process for the future. Halsey looked at him sharply. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that between your knowledge of genetic augmentation and my experience with creating enhanced warriors, we could develop a process with significantly reduced mortality rates. No more children dying on operating tables. No more washouts condemned to lives of disability and pain. The Emperor pulled up schematics that shouldn't have been accessible on Halsey's private network. Your Mjolnir armor is genius, a technological solution to bridge the gap between enhanced biology and battlefield effectiveness. But the human body underneath is still vulnerable. I can help you change that. In exchange for what? Halsey's scientific curiosity warred with her natural suspicion. You don't strike me as altruistic. I'm not. I want 3 things. The Emperor held up one armored finger. First, access to your cloning technology. You've used flash cloning to replace the children you conscripted. Crude work, but the underlying science is sound. I need that capability. A second finger. Second, complete genetic profiles of your Spartan 2s. I want to understand what markers made them compatible with augmentation. A third finger. Third, I want to meet the individual you're most proud of, the Spartan who exceeded all your expectations. Why? Halsey's hand drifted toward the panic button beneath her desk. Because exceptional individuals reveal truths about their entire species. Your best Spartan will tell me more about human potential in this reality than any amount of data analysis. The Emperor noticed her defensive posture. Doctor, if I intended harm, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I would have simply taken what I needed. I'm requesting your cooperation because I respect what you've accomplished and believe we can achieve more together. Halsey studied him for a long moment, her analytical mind weighing probabilities and risks. Finally, she made a decision. Spartan 117? John. He's currently deployed with Blue Team on a classified mission. But he's the best I've ever created. Perfect physical specimen, tactical genius, and something I can't quite quantify. Luck or fate or whatever you want to call it. He survives situations that should kill him. Fate. The Emperor's expression turned distant. Yes, I've known warriors like that. The galaxy itself seems to bend around them, ensuring their survival because they're needed for some greater purpose. He refocused on Halsey. I would very much like to meet this John 117, but that can wait. For now, I need your help with something more immediate. He pulled up new schematics, designs that made Halsey's breath catch. They showed armor far more advanced than Mjolnir, integrated weapon systems that shouldn't be possible with current technology, and enhancement procedures that addressed every limitation of the Spartan program. This is... Halsey struggled for words. This would take decades to develop, centuries maybe. With conventional research, yes, but I don't do conventional research. The Emperor's hands moved through the holographic display, adjusting specifications with practiced ease. I've designed this armor thousands of times across thousands of iterations. What you're seeing is the culmination of knowledge your species won't develop for another 10,000 years, assuming you survive that long. I'm giving you a shortcut. Why? The question burst from Halsey. Why help us? What do you gain from saving a species that isn't even from your reality? The Emperor was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of genuine regret. Because in my reality, I failed. I created an empire that spanned 1,000,000 worlds, and I watched it crumble into theocratic tyranny. I built warriors beyond human limitation, and they betrayed me. I tried to guide humanity toward greatness, and I created only stagnation and suffering. He met Halsey's eyes. But here, in this reality, I see humanity that survived without me. You're smaller, more fragile, desperately outmatched by your enemies. Yet you persist. You innovate. You fight with courage that my Imperium lost 10,000 years ago. Perhaps, Doctor, I'm helping you because I want to see what humanity can become when given the chance I never properly offered my own people. Halsey found herself believing him. Against all logic, against all her trained skepticism, she believed this ancient warrior genuinely wanted to help. All right, I'll work with you. But I have conditions. Name them. You don't touch my Spartans without my explicit approval. Every procedure, every enhancement, every risk. I approve it first. They're my responsibility. Agreed. Second, you teach me. Everything you know about genetic engineering, enhancement procedures, the theory behind your space marines. I want complete knowledge transfer. Also agreed. In fact, I insist on it. Knowledge hoarded is knowledge lost. The Emperor smiled slightly. You remind me of someone I once knew, a geneticist who helped create my Primarchs. She had your same fierce protectiveness toward her work, your same willingness to cross ethical lines in pursuit of excellence. What happened to her? She's dead, has been for 10,000 years. The Emperor's expression hardened. Which is why I'll teach you everything, Dr. Halsey. So that if I fall, my knowledge doesn't die with me. A chime interrupted them. Incoming communication flagged urgent. Halsey activated the holographic display to show Admiral Hood's grim face. Dr. Halsey, we have a situation. The Covenant fleet has returned. 43 vessels this time. They've learned from their previous engagement and adjusted their formation to prevent synchronized strikes. Hood's eyes shifted to the Emperor. They're also broadcasting on all frequencies, demanding to speak with the golden heretic who dared challenge the will of their gods. The Emperor's smile was predatory. Excellent. I was hoping they'd be foolish enough to communicate. Patch me through to their fleet, Admiral. It's time I had a conversation with these prophets. You're going to talk to them? Halsey asked. The Covenant don't negotiate. I'm not negotiating, Doctor. I'm explaining the new reality they face. The Emperor moved toward the exit. And if they're particularly foolish, I'm going to give them a demonstration of what happens when you threaten humanity under my protection. As he left, Halsey found herself both terrified and exhilarated. The Emperor of Mankind was about to confront the Covenant directly. Either they were about to witness humanity's salvation, or they just handed the galaxy's most dangerous warrior a platform to start an even more catastrophic war. She pulled up the enhanced armor designs he'd left on her system. The mathematics were sound. The engineering was brilliant. And if they could actually build this. Computer, classify all files from today's session under clearance level Omega. Authorization Halsey 77 Alpha. She stared at the designs that could revolutionize human warfare. And send a message to John. Tell him when he gets back from his mission, I have something extraordinary to show him. The computer acknowledged with a soft chime. Outside the laboratory, alarms began wailing as the Covenant fleet approached reach orbit once more. But this time, humanity had something the Covenant had never encountered. A warrior who had forgotten more about war than their entire species had ever learned. And he was about to remind the galaxy why humanity, despite all odds, refused to die. The second battle for Reach was about to begin, and the Emperor of Mankind intended to make it the Covenant's worst mistake. The bridge of the Day of Jubilation represented the apex of Covenant theological architecture. Every surface inscribed with prayers, every system blessed by Sanshayum priests, every weapon consecrated in the name of the Great Journey. The Prophet of Clarity floated in his gravity throne, ancient and withered, yet his eyes burned with zealous fire as he surveyed the human world below. The heretic has been silent for 4 hours, noted Shipmaster Lat Havram, his mandibles tight with frustration. Perhaps he fears to face the wrath of the gods. The prophet's lipless mouth curved into what might have been a smile. Or perhaps he prepares a trap. This golden warrior troubles me, Shipmaster. He speaks with authority that resonates even among our own forces. Already there are whispers, Sanghili questioning the orthodoxy, Ungoi repeating his heretical claims. Then we should glass the world immediately and eliminate the threat. No. The prophet's chair rotated to face the tactical display. If we destroy him without disproving his claims, we make him a martyr. If he speaks heresy, let him speak it before our entire fleet. Let our warriors witness his lies exposed and his power broken before the might of the faithful. As if summoned by the prophet's words, every communication system on the bridge activated simultaneously. Not hacked, the Covenant's encryption was supposedly unbreakable, but simply overridden, as though the technology itself had decided to obey a higher authority. The Emperor's voice filled the bridge, carried on frequencies that shouldn't exist, bypassing every security protocol with contemptuous ease. Prophet of Clarity, hierarchs of the Covenant, warriors of a dozen species united under false promises, I am the Emperor of Mankind, and I challenge everything you believe. The prophet's eyes widened. Around him, Sanghili warriors checked their weapons nervously. Even the Ungoi crew members shuffled uneasily at the sheer presence in that voice. Authority that transcended species, bypassed conscious thought, and spoke directly to something primal in every sentient mind. You speak boldly for one who is about to die. The prophet responded, his voice amplified across the fleet channels. Your species faces extinction. Your world burns. Yet you dare challenge the will of the gods. Your gods are dead, prophet. They died 100,000 years ago, trying to stop something they could neither understand nor control. And you, in your arrogance and ignorance, are leading your people to the same fate. Across 43 Covenant vessels, crews stopped their duties to listen. Even the hierarchs couldn't prevent this transmission. It was everywhere, on every frequency, impossible to block or silence. Heresy! The prophet's voice cracked with rage. The Forerunners achieved transcendence through activation of the sacred rings. They became one with the divine. They committed genocide. The Emperor's voice was cold as void. The installations you worship, the halos, are weapons designed to exterminate all sentient life in the galaxy. Not to elevate, not to transcend, but to eradicate. The Forerunners built them as a last desperate measure against the Flood, a parasitic horror that consumed every civilization it touched. They activated those weapons knowing it would kill them, knowing it would sterilize the galaxy, because extinction was preferable to flood consumption. Lies. But the prophet's voice wavered. Around him, Sanghili warriors exchanged glances. Some had seen the installations. Some had noticed details that didn't match the hierarch's descriptions. You know I speak truth, Prophet. You've studied the installations. You've communicated with Forerunner constructs, the oracles. They told you what the rings truly do, and you buried that knowledge because truth threatened your power. The Emperor's presence intensified, and on the bridge of the Day of Jubilation, temperature dropped as though reality itself recoiled from his words. You built an empire on lies. You united disparate species through fear and false promises. And now you lead them toward activation of weapons that will kill everything you claim to protect. Across the Covenant fleet, doubt spread like infection. Sangheli warriors who had harbored private questions suddenly found them voiced by an enemy who spoke with more certainty than their own prophets. Ungoi, who had died by thousands for the great journey, wondered why a human warrior would know their sacred mysteries. Most dangerously, the Megalekgolo, the bonded colonies of Lekgolo worms, felt something in the Emperor's presence that resonated with their collective consciousness. Truth, or something so close to truth that the distinction became meaningless. Shipmaster Lat, the Prophet hissed, locate the source of this transmission and destroy it. Prophet, the transmission has no source. It's everywhere. Our technicians report it's originating from inside every communication system simultaneously, including hardline systems with no wireless capability. The Emperor continued, relentless. Warriors of the Covenant, you are brave. You are honorable. You follow your faith with conviction I respect, even as I oppose it. But your leaders have betrayed you. They send you to die in service of a lie. They promise transcendence, but deliver only death. On the shadow of intent. Shipmaster Thel Vadam listened with growing certainty. Every doubt he'd harbored, every question the prophets had deflected, every inconsistency in the sacred texts, all of it suddenly made terrible sense. My crew grows restless, Thel said to his second-in-command, Ertas Vadam. They hear heresy, yet it resonates with truths we've all suspected. Ertas's mandibles twitched. The Golden Warrior. He defeated our forces without killing them. He speaks with knowledge no human should possess. What if he tells the truth? Then we are all damned, Thel replied quietly. Damned by our faith or damned by abandoning it. There is no safe choice remaining. The Emperor's transmission shifted targets. To the Sangheli, you are warriors of honor, trapped in a dishonorable war. You slaughter civilians, not because they threaten you, but because your prophets command it. Where is the honor in genocide? Where is the glory in glassing worlds filled with those who cannot fight back? Across Sangheli vessels, the words struck like plasma lances. Honor was everything to their culture. The suggestion that they fought dishonorably, that their great crusade was fundamentally without honor, cut deeper than any weapon. To the Ungoi, you die in droves for promises the hierarchs will never fulfill. You are cannon fodder, considered expendable by those who claim to lead you toward salvation. When was the last time an Ungoi achieved transcendence? When was the last time your prophets mourned your fallen? Ungoi soldiers throughout the fleet shifted nervously. It was true. They died by thousands in every engagement, and the hierarchs barely acknowledged their sacrifice. To the Kig Yar, you serve for profit, not faith. You know the prophets lie because you traffic in lies yourselves. How much are your lives worth to the hierarchs? Enough to ensure your species survives what's coming. Even the mercenary Kig Yar felt the question's weight. They served the Covenant for resources and territory. But would those rewards matter if the great journey was death? And to the Sanshayum, the prophets themselves, you hoard truth while spreading lies. You've discovered what the forerunners truly were, what the installations truly do, and you've hidden it behind religious dogma to maintain your power. But power built on lies is fragile, and I am about to shatter it. The Prophet of Clarity's chair spun toward his tactical display. All ships, concentrate fire on the human orbital platforms. I will not permit this heretic to sow further discord. But before the order could be executed, something impossible happened. The Emperor appeared, not on sensors, not on external cameras. He simply appeared on the bridge of the Day of Jubilation, golden armor blazing with light that had no visible source, his presence filling the space like a physical force. How? The prophet's voice died in his throat. Psychic translocation, one of many abilities your limited understanding cannot comprehend. The Emperor's sword materialized in his hand, wreathed in flames that burned without heat. I gave you the opportunity to hear truth, Prophet. You chose to silence it with violence. A predictable response, but disappointing nonetheless. Sangheli honor guards rushed forward, energy swords igniting. The Emperor moved like liquid mercury, his blade intercepting 3 strikes simultaneously before any of the warriors could process his speed. He didn't kill them, merely disarmed them with precision that spoke of millennia of combat mastery, sending their weapons clattering across the deck. I don't want to kill your guards, Prophet. They're loyal soldiers following orders. My quarrel is with you. The Prophet's chair attempted to retreat, but the Emperor's hand shot out, not touching the Sanshayum physically, but psychic force gripped the gravity throne like invisible chains. You will listen. Your fleet will listen, and you will make a choice. The Emperor's eyes blazed with golden fire. Abandon this assault. Return to your hierarchs. Tell them that humanity is now under the protection of a power they cannot comprehend. Tell them that if they continue this genocidal crusade, I will personally board High Charity, tear down the Forerunner dreadnought at its core, and expose every lie the Sanshayum have told for 3,000 years. You cannot! The Prophet gasped against the psychic pressure. The Covenant is eternal. Millions of warriors, thousands of ships, you are one being. I have ended empires that spanned galaxies. I have fought demon princes and elder gods. I have stood alone against extinction and prevailed. The Emperor leaned close, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried across every communication system in the fleet. Your covenant is impressive by this galaxy's standards, but I have seen true power, and your alliance of zealots is not it. He released the Prophet, who collapsed in his chair gasping. Return to your hierarchs, deliver my message, and know this. If I see your ships in orbit around a human world again, I won't be as merciful. The Emperor turned toward the bridge's viewport where Reach hung in space, scarred but defiant. This world is under my protection. As is every human colony, the age of Covenant aggression is over. The age of consequences has begun. Then, impossibly, he simply vanished. One moment present, the next gone. As though reality itself had swallowed him. The bridge of the Day of Jubilation erupted in chaos. Sangheli warriors argued with their commanders. Ungoi crews whispered fearfully. Even the usually stoic Megalic Golo pairs communed nervously with each other. The Prophet of Clarity stared at the empty space where the Emperor had stood, his ancient mind racing. Every instinct screamed to glass Reach immediately, to erase this threat before it spread further. But the Emperor's demonstration had accomplished something terrible. He'd proven that the Covenant's technological and numerical superiority meant nothing against a being who could appear anywhere, anytime, unstoppable and unkillable. Shipmaster Lat? The prophet's voice was hollow. Withdraw the fleet. We return to high charity. But prophet, the heretic, has demonstrated that he can appear on any of our ships at will. Can you guarantee he won't appear here again and kill me? Can you guarantee he won't materialize on every bridge simultaneously? The prophet's chair turned away from the viewport. We retreat, not in defeat, but in recognition that this enemy requires a different approach. The hierarchs must know of this development. Across the fleet, Covenant ships began pulling back from Reach orbit. Not routed, they maintained formation and discipline, but clearly in retreat. On the shadow of intent, Thel Vadam watched the Golden World recede and made a decision that would change his destiny. Ardas, access the fleet's restricted archives. Search for everything related to Forerunner installations, the Oracle communications, and anything mentioning mendicant bias. Shipmaster, that's heresy. Then I will be a heretic, Thel said quietly, because I must know if the Golden Warrior speaks truth. And if he does. His mandibles spread in something between smile and snarl. Then the hierarchs have much to answer for. The Covenant fleet departed Reach system, leaving behind a world that had been destined for destruction. Admiral Hood watched from the Cairo station, hardly daring to believe what his sensors showed. Commander Keyes, he said softly, did we just witness one man defeat the entire Covenant fleet? Not defeated, sir, but... Miranda struggled for words. I think we just watched him scare them. And I'm not sure which is more terrifying, what he did, or that the Covenant was afraid of him. Below on Reach, the Emperor stood in Castle Base's courtyard, surrounded by UNSC personnel who stared at him with awe and fear in equal measure. Dr. Halsey approached, her face pale. You just appeared on a Covenant flagship. You've been gone 3 minutes. How is that possible? The Emperor looked exhausted. The first time Halsey had seen genuine weakness in him. Psychic translocation across that distance in a non-warp reality nearly killed me. I won't be able to repeat that performance for at least 2 days while I recover. He smiled grimly. Fortunately, the Covenant don't know that. Let them believe I can appear anywhere at any time. Fear is more effective than force. You bluffed, Halsey breathed. You can't actually protect every human colony. Not yet, but I will. The Emperor straightened despite obvious fatigue. Now, Doctor, let's discuss those armor improvements. Because when the Covenant return, and they will return, I intend to ensure humanity can defend itself without requiring my direct intervention every time. The goal isn't to make you dependent on me. The goal is to make you strong enough to survive without me. As medical teams rushed forward to assess the Emperor's condition across the galaxy, the Covenant hierarchs received a message that would shake their empire to its foundations. A new power had entered the war. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the Covenant faced an enemy they genuinely feared. The Emperor of Mankind had announced his presence to the galaxy. Nothing would ever be the same. The silence in the war room of Castle Base was absolute, broken only by the low hum of cooling systems and the faint, rhythmic beeping from the Emperor's biomonitor. He sat, stripped of his ornate chest plate, in a medical chair that seemed flimsy beneath his imposing frame. Wires and sensor pads snaked across skin that was pale and crisscrossed with scars older than human civilization. Dr. Halsey studied the readouts, her brow furrowed in a mixture of awe and clinical concern. "Severe cellular degradation," she murmured, more to herself than to the Admiral and Colonel Ackerson, who watched from a few feet away. "Massive ATP depletion. It's as if every cell in his body just ran a marathon at a full sprint. I've never seen a human, or anything close to human, survive metabolic stress like this." "The translation was more costly than I anticipated," the Emperor said, his voice a low rumble, stripped of its usual omnipotent resonance. He accepted a nutrient paste from a medtech without complaint, a gesture of profound vulnerability. This reality, it resists such manipulations. It is like trying to swim through solid rock. Admiral Hood finally broke the tense silence. "What you did, it bought us time. The Covenant fleet is in full retreat, but they'll be back. And next time, they won't be trying to glass the planet. They'll be trying to kill you, specifically. They'll throw everything they have at this location." "Let them try," the Emperor replied, a flicker of his old fire returning to his eyes. "Their fear is a weapon we can now wield." "But you are correct, Admiral. Fear alone is not a permanent strategy. It must be backed by undeniable force. We have a brief window to build that force." He gestured to the main holotank, which flickered to life, displaying not the tactical situation around Reach, but a complex, multi-layered schematic. It was a fusion of UNSC technology and something else. Something brutally elegant and terrifyingly efficient. "The Mark I Aegis-powered assault armor," Dr. Halsey announced, a note of barely suppressed excitement in her voice. "Based on the Emperor's, designs. It utilizes a miniaturized fusion power plant derived from our own Mjolnir systems, but with a reactor efficiency we thought was a century away. The armor plating is a ceramic metal composite, but the molecular bonding technique is revolutionary. It's lighter than titanium A, but offers twice the protection." Ackerson stepped closer, his own eye-trained mind already calculating the implications. "Weapon systems? Fully integrated," the Emperor said. "A shoulder-mounted micro-missile pod with 12 smart munitions. A wrist-mounted plasma blade, non-Covenant in origin, I assure you, that can cut through any known material. And the primary weapon?" He zoomed in on the schematics. "A directed energy projector I've termed a Volkite charger. It doesn't burn or explode. It transmutes the target's matter into ash through rapid, violent combustion. It is thorough." Hood stared at the weapon specifications. "This is a weapon of terror." "It is a weapon of extermination," the Emperor corrected, his tone matter of fact. "Designed for enemies who offer no quarter and deserve none. The Covenant, the Flood. There are foes for whom diplomacy is a fantasy and containment is a delay of the inevitable. This armor and its armament are for those foes." "And the soldiers inside?" Ackerson pressed. "You can't put a standard Marine in this. The G-forces from the jump jets alone would turn their bones to powder." "No," the Emperor agreed. "Not a standard Marine." He brought up a new set of files. Genetic sequences, neural mapping data, and surgical procedures that made Halsey's Spartan II augmentations look crude by comparison. "We will use your existing Spartan IIs as the foundation. Their bodies are already enhanced, their minds conditioned for war. With further, more refined genetic and cybernetic augmentation, they can become something more. Something akin to the warriors of my old legions." Halsey's protective instincts flared. "My Spartans are not raw material for you to experiment on. The procedures you're outlining are extreme, neural interface hardpoints, secondary neurocortex implantation, skeletal lacing with an adaptive metamaterial. The risk of catastrophic failure is immense. The risk of doing nothing is extinction, Doctor. The Emperor countered, his gaze locking with hers. Your John 1:17 is exceptional, but he is one man. I am proposing a way to create 100 like him, 1,000, an army of demigods to stand against the darkness that is coming. The procedures have a projected failure rate of less than 5%, a vast improvement over your initial work and my own past efforts. 5% is still 5%, Halsey shot back. They are my responsibility. And humanity is mine. The words echoed in the room, not with rage, but with a depth of conviction that was somehow more frightening. The Emperor's psychic presence, though diminished, pressed against their minds, not as an attack, but as an unavoidable truth. I have watched my species die before. I will not watch it happen again. Your Spartans are the key. They are the bridge between the humanity of this age and the future it must have to survive. The argument was cut short by a priority alert from the comm station. A young lieutenant swiveled in his chair, his face pale. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission, encrypted with our own Omega-level protocols, but it's not from any UNSC asset. It's originating from a Covenant battle network. Put it through, Hood ordered, his hand instinctively resting on his sidearm. The holotank shifted, the armor schematics replaced by the distorted, yet masked face of a Sangheli. But the voice was not one of hatred or religious fervor. It was measured, deliberate, and spoke in flawless, unaccented English. Emperor of mankind, I am Thel Vadam, shipmaster of the CCS-class battlecruiser, Shadow of Intent. We must speak. The Emperor stood, the medical sensors detaching from his skin with faint rips of adhesive. He seemed to draw strength from the confrontation, his fatigue sloughing away. Shipmaster, you risk much by contacting me. Your prophets would name you heretic for this conversation alone. The title of heretic is losing its sting when the heresy may be truth, Thel replied, his large, intelligent eyes scanning the humans in the room behind the Emperor. Your words have sown discord through the entire fleet. Questions are being asked that the hierarchs cannot answer. The name mendicant bias has been purged from our archives, yet whispers of it persist in forbidden texts. What do you want, Shipmaster? Hood interjected, stepping forward. Confirmation, Thel said simply. You claim the halos are weapons of death, not divine transcendence. You claim the prophets know this. If this is true, then the Covenant is not a holy empire, but a suicide pact for every species within it. I would have proof before I led my crew to a death that has no meaning. The Emperor nodded slowly. You seek the Oracle, the forerunner AI you communed with generations ago, whose testimony your prophets twisted to build their religion. Thel's mandibles twitched in surprise. You know of this? I know the patterns of lies told by those in power to maintain control. The story is always the same. Only the names change. The Emperor leaned forward. I will give you your proof, Thel Vadam. There is a halo ring in the system. Installation Aero 4. Your fleet is moving to secure it, is it not? A long pause. It is. The prophet of stewardship himself is leading the expedition. He seeks to activate the ring and begin the great journey, silencing your heresy with divine fire. Then that is where you will find your truth, the Emperor said. Go to the ring. Find the Oracle there. It is called 343 Guilty Spark. Ask it the purpose of the halos. Do not ask Shayum to translate its words. Listen for yourself. The truth requires no interpreter. Thel Vadam was silent for a long moment, his gaze unwavering. And if the truth is what you say it is, what then? Then, Shipmaster. The Emperor's voice was like iron. You have a choice. Die in service to a lie, or live to fight for a truth that could save your species. The war between our peoples is a pointless distraction from the true enemy. The Flood does not care for the faith of its meals. The transmission cut out, leaving the war room in stunned silence. You just encouraged a Covenant shipmaster to go to the most powerful weapon in the galaxy, Ackerson said, his voice tight. What if he decides to activate it? He won't, the Emperor stated with absolute certainty. He is a warrior of honor, not a fanatic. When he hears the truth from the Oracle's own voice, his only course will be to stop the activation. He may even become an ally. An ally? Hood scoffed. After 27 years of genocide, you think we can just shake hands with the elites? In the face of galactic extinction, Admiral, former enemies become the only friends you have. The Emperor turned back to Halsey, the moment of diplomacy over. Now, Doctor, we have our window. The Covenant fleet is divided and questioning its faith. Thel Vadam will either start a civil war or deliver us a powerful ally. In either case, their attention is diverted. We must work quickly. He gestured once more to the Aegis armor schematics. Begin the production protocols, then ready your Spartans. We are going to forge the first of a new legion. The Imperium may be lost to me, but its lessons are not. Humanity will have its protectors. As the technicians and scientists scrambled to enact his orders, the Emperor stood alone for a moment, looking at the star chart on the main display. His gaze was fixed on the location of Installation 04. He had set a pawn in motion, a Sangheli shipmaster on a quest for truth. It was a gamble that could save them all or condemn the galaxy to fire. But in the grim calculus of war, some gambles had to be taken. The Emperor of Mankind knew this better than anyone. The air in the subterranean hangar was cold, thick with the smell of ozone, welding torches, and an undercurrent of something else. The sharp, coppery scent of raw bio-augmentation. Before the Emperor stood the 6 members of Noble Team, their Mjolnir armor reflecting the harsh industrial lights. Beside them, Dr. Halsey watched with a clinical mask that did not fully conceal her apprehension. They are your finest, the Emperor stated, his gaze moving from Carter to Kat, Jorge to Emil, and finally resting on the silent, lethal presence of 6. But they are limited by the technology of this age. What I offer is a bridge to a future your species was meant to have. Jorge Zo52, the team's gentle giant, was the first to speak, his voice a low rumble. Sir, with respect, we've seen the schematics. The procedures are extensive. They are necessary, the Emperor replied, his tone leaving no room for debate. He gestured to a series of surgical suites that had been constructed with terrifying speed. Your bodies will be reinforced with a ceramic ossified bone lattice. Your nervous systems will be rewired with psychoreactive filaments, allowing for synaptic response times that border on precognition. Your organs will be supplemented. A secondary heart, a multi-lung for filtration, a preomnor for poison digestion. You will become more than human. You will become the bulwark against the terror that approaches. And if we refuse? Emil A239 asked, his skull-painted helmet tilted in defiance. Then you may leave, the Emperor said. And the simplicity of the answer seemed to disarm the Spartan. Your service has been exemplary. You have earned the right to choose. But know this: the war is changing. The covenant you have fought is a prelude. The flood is a threat that consumes worlds, that turns your own dead against you. Without these enhancements, you will die against it. With them, you may yet save billions. There was a long silence, broken only by the hum of machinery. Then, one by one, the Spartans nodded. Carter A259 spoke for them all. We're in. The process was not gentle. For 72 hours, the hangar echoed with the sounds of surgery and the low, pained groans of super soldiers enduring transformations that would break a normal human. The Emperor moved between the surgical bays, his psychic presence a calming, guiding force, his ancient knowledge directing teams of UNSC medics and ONI bioengineers in procedures they could barely comprehend. Dr. Halsey observed it all, her datapad filled with notes that would revolutionize medicine, if humanity survived to use them. She watched as Jorge's already massive frame was expanded further, his strength multiplied. She saw Kat's cybernetic arm replaced with a fully integrated limb that responded to her thoughts faster than her original flesh ever could. She witnessed the Emperor himself, his hands glowing with psychic energy, carefully weaving the psychoreactive filaments into Six's neural cortex, enhancing the Spartans' already preternatural combat instincts into something akin to a sixth sense. While the augmentations proceeded, the first set of Aegis armor was assembled. It was not the gold of the Emperor's own battleplate, but a grim gunmetal gray, etched with the UNSC eagle. It was larger, more angular, and more menacing than Mjolnir, a walking fortress of integrated weaponry and layered armor. It was as the first suit was being powered for its initial systems check that the alarms blared. Admiral Hood to all stations. Slip space rupture detected at the system's edge. Multiple contacts. It's not the main Covenant fleet. It's a splinter group. They're heading for the Visegrad relay. The Emperor's head snapped up from where he was monitoring Six's vitals. The relay is the key to the orbital defense grid. If they take it, they can blind us. On the surgical table, Spartan B32, Noble 6, stirred. The Spartan's eyes opened, and for a moment, they glowed with a faint, golden light. "I can hear them," Six whispered. The voice altered, deeper, resonating with new power. "The enemy. Their thoughts are loud, afraid. The psychoconductive filaments are integrating," the Emperor said, a note of satisfaction in his voice. "Your first test awaits, my warrior." 30 minutes later, the modified Pelican designated Foxtrot 815 screamed towards the Visegrad Mountains. Inside, Noble Team stood, clad in their new Aegis armor. The suits were silent, their movement a whisper of servos and hydraulics, a stark contrast to the heavier thrum of their old Mjolnir. "Suit integration is 100%, Carter reported over the team's new secure Vox link. "Weapon systems are green, feeling strong." "Too many big words, Commander," Emil chuckled, hefting his newly integrated Volkite charger. "Let's just see if this fancy scrap works." They fast-roped into a hot LZ, Covenant plasma fire already chewing the ground around them. What happened next was not a battle. It was a slaughter. Jorge moved with speed that belied his new bulk, his integrated heavy bolter, a design the Emperor had provided, chewing through a Covenant phantom like it was paper. Kat's enhanced cybernetics allowed her to hack the enemy battlenet in seconds, turning their own comms into a weapon of confusion. Carter's strategic awareness was magnified tenfold. He could sense enemy movements before they happened, directing the team with prescient precision. But it was Six who was the most transformed. The Spartan moved like a phantom. a blur of gray steel and lethal intent. The integrated wrist blade sliced through elite energy shields as if they weren't there. The shoulder-mounted missile pod launched micro-missiles that curved around cover to strike their targets. And when a squad of jackals tried to pin 6 down, the Spartan simply knew. A flick of the wrist, a burst from the Volkite charger, and 3 jackals were transmuted into piles of ash before they could even fire. Through it all, 6 could feel them, the faint, psychic impressions of the Covenant soldiers. Their fear, their zeal, their confusion. It was a torrent of alien emotion. But the Spartan's enhanced mind processed it, used it. 6 knew where the next attack would come from, which grunt was about to break and run, which elite was the real leader. The relay station was secured in under 10 minutes. The Covenant force, a battalion strength group, was annihilated. Noble team stood amidst the wreckage, not a single scratch on their new armor. Back in the hangar, watching the live feed, Admiral Hood let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. My God. Dr. Halsey looked from the screen to the Emperor, who stood silently, observing his handiwork. You've turned them into... I don't know what they are. They are the future, the Emperor said softly. The first of the new Aegis Guard. They are what humanity must become to survive in a galaxy that hates them. But his triumphant mood was short-lived. A new alert, this one flagged with the highest priority, flashed across the main display. It was a deep space probe, one of the few that had survived the initial Covenant assault. Its data was fragmented, chaotic. The Emperor's face grew grim as he deciphered the sensor logs. Thel Vadam found his truth. The holotank resolved into a grainy, long-range image. It showed a halo ring, Installation 04. And swarming across its surface, consuming everything in its path, was a tide of grotesque, pulsating biomass. The Flood. The Covenant expedition opened a containment facility, the Emperor said, his voice heavy with a dread that seemed to chill the very air. They have unleashed the parasite, and Thel Vadam's ship is engaging not the UNSC, but other Covenant vessels. The civil war has begun. He turned to Hood and Halsey, his expression stark. This changes everything. The Covenant is no longer the primary threat. If the Flood establishes a foothold, if it reaches a populated world, this galaxy will die. The Halos are the only weapon that can stop it, and their activation would be a victory for no one. He looked towards the hangar bay, where Noble Team was returning, their new armor stained with ash and alien blood. They were a magnificent weapon, a testament to human potential. But they were not enough. Not for this. Recall all forces, the Emperor commanded, his voice ringing with absolute authority. All ships, all Spartans. The war with the Covenant is now a secondary concern. We have a new objective. He pointed at the horrific image of the flood-covered halo. We must contain the outbreak. We must find a way to destroy the Flood without activating the ring. And we must do it now, before this infection spreads across the stars. He looked at the members of Noble Team as they entered. Your first victory was impressive. Your next battle will be against an enemy that knows no fear, feels no pain, and will never, ever stop. Prepare yourselves. We are going to a halo. The galaxy's nightmare had begun. And humanity's ancient guardian would now face a horror even his vast experience had never truly conquered. The Pillar of Autumn hung in the silent blackness near Threshold, a lone spear poised to be thrown into hell. On its bridge, Captain Jacob Keyes studied the tactical plot, his pipe cold and forgotten in his hand. The display showed a nightmare unfolding on the ring world below. The Covenant fleet was tearing itself apart. Thel Vadam's shadow of intent traded plasma fire with 2 other Covenant battlecruisers, while swarming dropships disgorged forces not against human positions, but towards nightmarish, shifting masses of biomass that crawled across the ring's surface. The Emperor's broadcast did this, Keyes murmured to himself. He had felt the being's presence in his mind during the battle for Reach, a vast, ancient intellect that had guided his ship with impossible precision. Now, that same being had shattered Covenant unity with nothing but words. "Captain," Cortana's voice chimed from the console. "We're being hailed. It's the Shadow of Intent. Thel Vadam himself." "Put him through." The Sangheli's face appeared on the screen, his features set in a grim mask. "Human Captain, the Oracle has spoken. The Golden One spoke truth. These rings are not divine. They are a weapon of last resort, designed to starve the parasite you call the Flood by killing all it can feed upon." He gestured to the carnage on his own viewer. "My brothers call me heretic for believing this. They would still activate the ring and commit galactic suicide for a lie. We must stop them." Keyes felt the world tilt. A Covenant shipmaster was asking for his help. "What is your proposal, shipmaster?" "The library. The prophet of stewardship is there, protected by his zealots. He seeks the index to fire the ring. My forces are engaged with his loyalists. I cannot reach him in time. You have Spartans. Send them. Stop him." Before Keyes could answer, a new presence filled the bridge. The holographic emitters flickered, and a second figure resolved next to Cortana's, the Emperor of mankind, his form shimmering with psychic energy. "Thel Vadam." The Emperor's voice was like grinding stone. "You have chosen wisdom over blind faith. Your honor does you credit." "The honor of my species is why I fight," Thel replied, mandibles tight. "I will not let the Sanshayum doom all life for their pride. But the parasite, it spreads too quickly. The Flood is a threat I am intimately familiar with," the Emperor said, a shadow of an ancient, terrible memory in his eyes. "It cannot be reasoned with, bargained with, or contained by conventional means. It is a psychic cancer, a hive mind of pure consumption. Sending conventional forces into its heart is defeated." He turned his gaze to Keyes. "Captain, your Spartan 117 is on the ring. He is a formidable warrior, but he is one man facing 2 armies and an apocalypse. He will fail without intervention." "What intervention?" Keyes asked. "My ship is all but combat ineffective." "Not your ship, mine." The Emperor's image turned, and through the bridge viewport, something tore its way into reality. It was not a slipspace rupture. Reality itself seemed to bleed, a wound of gold and fire opening in the void. From it emerged a vessel, not of metal and welds, but of stone, adamantium, and impossible geometries, wreathed in a psychic corona that made the eyes water. It was a fraction of the size of the Autumn, but it radiated power that dwarfed the human cruiser. The Imperator Somnium, the Emperor named it. A shard of my past, summoned across the gulf between realities. It will not last long in this universe, but it will last long enough. He looked back at Thel. "Shipmaster, coordinate your fire with the Somnum. Target the Flood biomass concentrations. We will burn the infection from the ring's surface and create a path for my Aegis Guard." On the surface of Halo, the world had become a charnel house. Master Chief fought his way through Covenant and Flood alike, the Monitor 343. Guilty Spark chirping happily about the reclamation as grotesque, reanimated corpses shambled towards him. He was tiring, his ammunition running low. When the sky caught fire, lances of golden energy, unlike any plasma or laser, speared down from the strange new vessel in orbit. Where they struck the flood, the corruption didn't just burn, it unmade, dissolving into nothingness with a psychic scream that echoed in the chief's very soul. At the same time, precise plasma fire from the shadow of intent began systematically eliminating Covenant anti-air batteries that barred the way to the library. Reclaimer. Guilty spark buzzed in confusion. This is most irregular. The defensive platforms are not rated for this kind of energy signature. A new voice cut through the comm channel, calm and impossibly authoritative. Spartan 1 and 17. This is the Emperor of mankind. You have fought well, son of Halsey, but your task is beyond any single warrior. Reinforcements are inbound. Hold your position. From a descending Thunderhawk gunship, a blocky, brutalist aircraft that was a stark contrast to UNSC design, 6 figures emerged. They landed with earth-shaking force, their gray Aegis armor unscathed by the drop. Noble team had arrived. Chief, Carter's voice came through the comm. We'll clear the path. You get to the library and stop that prophet. What followed was a symphony of destruction. The Aegis Guard moved as one, their integrated weapon systems firing in perfect harmony. Jorge's heavy bolter chewed through flood infection forms like a scythe. Kat's enhanced hacking skills disabled Covenant security fields. Emil's Volkite charger turned combat forms into ash. And Six moved through the chaos like death itself. The Spartans' enhanced senses predicting every flood lunge, every Covenant ambush, striking with lethal, preternatural efficiency. They fought their way to the library doors, a towering forerunner structure now besieged by both Covenant and Flood. This is it, Chief, Carter called out. We'll hold this entrance. No one gets through. You finish this. As the Master Chief disappeared into the library, the true horde descended. The Flood, sensing a powerful concentration of biomass, threw everything it had at the 6 Aegis Guards. It was a tidal wave of claws, tentacles, and gibbering madness. The Emperor, his consciousness linked to his warriors, felt their strain. He stood aboard the Imperator's Somnium, his physical form beginning to flicker, the strain of maintaining the vessel in this reality immense. They cannot hold indefinitely, he communicated to Thel Vadam. The Flood will overwhelm them through sheer numbers. We need a new strategy. On the surface, Carter A259 knew it too. He saw Emil fall, his armor finally breached by 100 grasping claws, his Volkite charger firing until the very last second. He saw Kat's systems overload as a Flood proto-gravemind attempted to psychically dominate her, forcing Jorge to put a bolt round through her helmet before she could turn on them. The cost was catastrophic. We're not going to make it, Jorge said, his voice heavy as he provided covering fire for 6. We don't have to, Carter replied, his mind clear, the Emperor's strategic wisdom flowing through him. We just have to buy the Chief enough time. He made a decision. Jorge, 6, fall back to the gunship. Get clear. Commander, 6 began. That's an order. Carter activated the demolition charges they had placed at the library entrance. The Emperor gave us a chance to be more. To be the shield. This is what that means. As Jorge and 6 fought their way back to the Thunderhawk, Carter A259 stood his ground, his Aegis armor's power core set to overload. When the flood tide finally crashed over him, the resulting explosion vaporized everything within 100 meters, sealing the library entrance. Aboard the Autumn, Keyes watched the sensor feed in horrified silence. The Emperor's image flickered more violently. The sacrifice is made. The path is bought. Now, it is in the hands of your Spartan, Captain. In the control room, Master Chief fought the Prophet of Stewardship and his elite guards. It was a brutal, close-quarters battle, But the chief, fueled by the lives spent to get him here, prevailed. He seized the index, but 343 Guilty Spark was insistent. Now, Reclaimer, let us activate the ring, commence the great journey. It was then that the Emperor's voice spoke directly into the chief's mind. A final, desperate communication. Spartan 117, the monitor lies. Activation does not bring transcendence. It brings death. For everyone. You must not fire the ring. You must destroy it. The chief hesitated for only a second. He saw the data Cortana was pulling, the Emperor's warnings confirmed. The divine journey was galactic genocide. Change of plan, Cortana, the chief said, slamming the index into a different console. We're not firing Halo. We're overloading its core. We're blowing it up. The Pillar of Autumn, its engines crippled but its reactor intact, was piloted by Keyes on a suicide run into the ring's superstructure. As the ship plowed into the installation, the resulting chain reaction began to tear the ring apart. The Imperator's somnium faded from existence, its task complete. The Emperor's form solidified once more on the Autumn's bridge, just as the ship began to break apart. He looked at Keyes. You have saved the galaxy, Captain. Your name will be remembered. Thel Vadam's voice came through one last time. The Covenant is broken. The truth is free. The war is not over, but it has changed. Thank you, Golden One. As the Autumn shattered and the Halo ring erupted into a billion fragments, the Emperor used the last of his strength, not to save himself, but to ensure the Master Chief and Cortana escaped in a life pod. He stood on the disintegrating bridge as the void claimed it, a solitary, golden figure against the fire. He had come to this reality to see if humanity could survive without him. He had found they could, but he had also found that they shouldn't have to, not alone. The first Halo was destroyed. The Covenant was in civil war. Humanity had new allies and new, terrifyingly powerful warriors. And the Emperor of mankind had found a new purpose. The Crucible had tempered them all. And the future, for the first time in decades, was not certain doom, but a war that could actually be won. The destruction of Installation 04 sent ripples across the galaxy that would reshape the course of history. The Covenant, its foundational lies exposed by a Sangheili heretic and a human emperor, fractured into warring factions. Thel Vadam separatists, the seeds of the future swords of Sangelios, now viewed humanity not as vermin to be exterminated, but as reluctant allies in a war against a common, parasitic foe. The Great Schism had begun not as a coup, but as a crisis of faith ignited by an impossible truth-teller. For the United Nations Space Command, the victory was Pyrrhic but transformative. Reach, though scarred, stood unconquered. The Spartan IIs who had undergone the Emperor's procedures became the first of the Aegis Guard. A new breed of protector whose very existence shifted humanity's military doctrine from desperate defense to calculated, overwhelming response. Dr. Halsey, armed with knowledge from a 38,000-year-old mind, began work on a new generation of enhancements, ensuring the horrors of the initial Spartan program would not be repeated. And the Emperor of mankind himself? He had arrived a displaced god, a relic of a failed empire, seeking only to understand if his authoritarian path had been a tragic mistake. He found his answer in the resilience of this younger, freer humanity. They were fragile, yes, and desperately outmatched. But they were also innovative, courageous, and capable of alliances his own Imperium would have deemed heresy. He would not build another empire here. He would not demand worship or absolute control. Instead, He would become the guardian they never knew they needed, the strategist in the shadows, the architect of their ascension, the shield against the darkness that even now stirred in the void. The flood had been contained, not defeated. The Covenant loyalists still commanded vast fleets. The war was far from over. But for the first time since the Covenant first glassed harvest, hope was not a delusion, but a weapon. And as that hope took root, the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what humanity, guided by its oldest protector, would become.